dictator Efrain Rios Montt guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity. He was accused of ordering the murder, torture and displacement of thousands of indigenous Mayans. Montt has been sentenced to 80 years in prison.
Years of civil war in which 200,000 people were killed, few thought this moment would come. The former military leader of Guatemala, Efrain Rios Montt, in court to hear his sentence on charges of genocide and crimes against humanity. In court too, some of the thousands of victims, members of the Ischil ethnic group, who day after day had testified over the rape, torture and murder the military had inflicted on them and their families during Rios Montt's time in power.
Guatemala court after the judge read out the guilty verdict.
He was aware of what was taking place and he did nothing to stop it. For the reason expressed, the judges believe the actions of the accused fit the definition of genocide.
I know this doesn't erase the pain, but it guarantees that the atrocities committed by the Guatemalan army won't be repeated. My brother can finally rest in peace, and that thug will finally go to prison. And that means a lot in this country where there's so much impunity.
Efrain Rios Montt es responsable como autor del delito de genocidio.
When finally the judge issued her findings, they were unequivocal. Rios Montt had overseen genocide in Guatemala and had done nothing to prevent it. To cheers from the human rights campaigners in court, Judge Barrios sentenced the former military leader to 80 years in prison, 50 for genocide, 30 for crimes against humanity. Hunger, systematic rape and forced displacements had all been used as tools of war against the Ischil people, she said, for whom merely being a member of the indigenous group was a mortal offence. It was everything which the victims' families in Guatemala had been hoping to hear for decades. But for the former president's supporters, it was a gross misrepresentation of his time as leader. He had protested his innocence until the last, saying he was not involved in local conflicts. But it wasn't enough to convince the court.
The judge said as Supreme Commander Efrain Rios Montt bore responsibility for the massacre of more than 1,700 Ischil people in 1982. The judge also ruled that Montt's forces carried out a strategy of rape and torture against the indigenous community and forced thousands of people from their land.
With this ruling, Guatemalan justice has taken a step forward and we hope that justice continues.
Rios Montt's supporters say his actions aren't war crimes, but those of a leader in the midst of a civil war. By the time Rios Montt took power in a coup in March of 1982, the government had been at war with leftist groups for 22 years. But during his 17 months in power, the fighting intensified and an estimated 80,000 people were killed. The war finally ended in 1996, and forensic experts are still unearthing the remains of victims. In all, 200,000 people were killed. Forensic anthropologist Freddie Pecciarelli was a witness for the prosecution.
It makes me very proud that what we saw in all of those graves throughout all of those years was understood and interpreted properly by these judges.
Many Guatemalans see this trial as a test for a weak justice system that he needs to get used to. As Judge Barrios concluded her ruling, she pushed for investigators to open up more cases, perhaps putting Guatemala on a path toward reconciliation of a violent history. Guatemala State.